Have you ever felt so utterly hopeless that you wanted someone else to end your suffering for you? On the morning of April 1st, 1984, Marvin Gaye was in exactly that position. Cocaine addiction, $4.5 million in tax debt, failed marriages, and crushing depression had already destroyed him from within. But he couldn't bring himself to commit suicide. Both his Christian faith and his own fear wouldn't allow it. So he devised the most horrific plan imaginable. He turned his 70-year-old father into his own executioner. Throughout that final day, he systematically provoked his father, attacked him, and pushed him to the breaking point. Marvin's last words reveal everything. "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I made him do it." If you want to hear this story to the end, please don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't just a murder story. This is the most twisted psychological manipulation in modern history. Marvin Gaye Sr. got up early as usual. While making coffee, he heard his son enter the kitchen. But there was something different about Marvin from the night before, a strange brightness in his eyes, as if he'd made a major decision. "Good morning, Father," Marvin said, with a more formal tone than ever before. Even this word choice was intentional. Father, not Dad or Pops. It was meant to create distance. During breakfast, Marvin began asking his father strange questions. "Dad, have you ever killed anyone?" Marvin Sr. was surprised. "What kind of question is that, son?" Instead of answering, Marvin asked another question. "If you had to kill someone, how would you feel?" This conversation was designed to increase his father's discomfort. Marvin had begun applying psychological pressure. At 9 a.m., Alberta Gaye left to go shopping. Only father and son remained in the house. Marvin had been waiting for this. He wanted no witnesses for the most critical part of his plan. But first, he needed to further deteriorate his father's mental state. Marvin made an unexpected move. He called the police. "My father is threatening me," he said into the phone. "I'm afraid." This was brilliant manipulation, because it served two purposes. First, to make his father even more paranoid. Second, to establish his own innocent victim image. When the police arrived, Marvin was calm and composed, while his father was agitated and defensive. The officers assessed the situation and saw no immediate danger. Marvin told the police, "I'm sorry for bothering you," and sent them away. But the damage was done. Marvin Sr. was now totally humiliated. The neighbors had seen. The neighborhood would talk. The real purpose of this tactic was to push his father to the ultimate breaking point. For Marvin Sr., the worry about what the neighborhood would think was worse than anything. And Marvin exploited this. "Now everyone will think you're a violent man," he said, looking at his father's face. Marvin didn't attack his father. He made a smarter move. He provoked his father into pushing him. While they were talking in the kitchen, Marvin entered his father's personal space, cornering him. "Why do you hate me so much?" he asked, his face very close to his father's. Marvin Sr. became uncomfortable and tried to push his son away. Marvin was expecting this. He fell back dramatically and shouted, "Look, you're resorting to violence again." This was theater, but it had a purpose: to put his father in the aggressor position and make himself look like the victim. But it wasn't enough yet. Marvin Sr. was just confused and upset, not murderous. Marvin knew he needed to take more extreme measures, so he moved to the next level. Marvin began opening up about childhood traumas, but not in a therapeutic way. He used them as weapons. "You never apologized for beating me when I was 5, he said. "When I was crying at 10, you said boys don't cry. When I was 15, you beat me for hours in the church basement for talking to girls." With each memory he shared, his father's facial expression changed. Marvin Sr. began getting defensive. "I was trying to make you a good person." But Marvin was ready. "A good person. Look what I became. A drug addict, depressed, a broken man." The purpose of this conversation wasn't catharsis. It was calculated provocation. Marvin wanted to bring his father's mental state to the breaking point, and it was working. Marvin Sr.'s hands had started shaking. Marvin distanced himself from his father, but had filled the house with a psychologically toxic atmosphere. He went up to his room and turned on music, but this wasn't normal music. He started playing Albert King's "I'll Play the Blues for You" at maximum volume. His choice of this song wasn't random. The lyrics began with "I'll play the blues for you until the day I die." Marvin Sr. asked him to turn off the music, but Marvin ignored him. Instead, he turned it up even louder. Neighbors began complaining. Phones started ringing. Marvin was systematically raising his father's stress level, because he knew his father was a control freak, and this chaos would drive him crazy. Around noon, Marvin came downstairs and confronted his father. This time he tried a different tactic, using vulnerability. "Dad, I'm a very sick man," he said. his voice broken. "And you never helped me. You always beat me, always put me down." This was emotional manipulation, trying to make his father feel guilty and put him on the defensive. Marvin brought up one of his father's most sensitive topics, his cross-dressing past. "Dad, do you know what they say about you in the neighborhood?" he began. Marvin Sr.'s face changed. This topic always led to arguments, but this time Marvin used a different approach. Instead of direct insults, he spoke in a way that would make his father feel shame. "They call you a freak, and I think they're right." These words deeply hurt Marvin Sr., but he wasn't angry enough yet. Marvin knew he needed to go deeper. His father's greatest fear was being the subject of neighborhood ridicule, and Marvin began to exploit this fear. "I've always wondered, how did you feel when you wore dresses?" Marvin Sr. stood up, his face red. "End this conversation now, Marvin." But Marvin didn't stop. "What did Mom feel when she saw you like that?" This was too much. Marvin Sr. tried to slap his son, but Marvin dodged and laughed. This laugh was intentional, to drive his father even more crazy. Everyone was asleep in the house at 210-0101 Gramercy Place in Los Angeles. Marvin Gaye Sr. woke up to sounds coming from his son's room. Marvin Jr. was talking again, but this time not to himself. When he cracked the door open, the scene shocked him. His son stood facing the mirror with a determination in his eyes he'd never seen before. "Tomorrow," Marvin was saying to his reflection. "Tomorrow everything ends." Marvin Sr. knew his son had been acting strange lately, but this was different. This time there was something planned about it. This midnight conversation was the first sign of what would happen the next day. But what was truly horrifying was the fact that Marvin had been preparing this plan for days, maybe even weeks. Because suicide by proxy isn't a simple decision. It requires calculated steps to psychologically manipulate your father into triggering him. That night, Marvin also went to his mother's room. Alberta Gaye would remember her son sitting on the edge of her bed and holding her hand. "Mama," Marvin had said, his voice softer than usual, "you've always been a good mother. Thank you for everything." Alberta thought these words were just a normal show of affection. But Marvin was saying goodbye. When Alberta Gaye returned from shopping, she found a tension-filled atmosphere in the house. Marvin Sr. was sitting quietly in the living room, his eyes red. Marvin, however, appeared unusually cheerful, as if nothing had happened. This contrast disturbed Alberta. At dinner, Marvin was sweet and affectionate to his mother, but completely ignored his father. This passive-aggressive behavior irritated his father even more. Marvin knew his father hated this silent treatment. After dinner, Marvin took his mother aside and said something strange to her. "Mama, if something happens to me, you should know that I love you very much." Alberta found these words melodramatic, but Marvin was serious. This was the final part of his farewell speech. When they were alone, Marvin stepped to the next level. He approached very close to his father's face and whispered, "You're a weak man. You never were a real man." These words hit Marvin Sr.'s deepest insecurities. "I'm stronger than you," Marvin continued. "I achieved fame, made money, conquered the world. What did you do? You just prayed and cross-dressed." This insult was too much. Marvin Sr. tried to push his son, but Marvin was ready. He resisted the push and pushed back. "Come on, old man. Show me what you got." This physical challenge was exactly what he wanted. The fighting briefly escalated, but Marvin Sr. quickly tired due to his heart problems. Marvin saw this as an opportunity. "You can't even fight. Pathetic." Marvin initiated his final psychological game at the breakfast table. Making direct eye contact with his father, he began to speak. "Dad, have you ever killed anyone?" Alberta was shocked, but Marvin Sr. was even more upset. "Marvin, what kind of question is that?" "Simple question, Dad. Do you know how to use a weapon?" There was a taunting quality in Marvin's voice. Marvin Sr. stood up. "End this conversation now." But Marvin smiled. "You're getting angry, Dad. Good. Show me that anger." Alberta tried to intervene, but Marvin gently stopped her. "Mama, please go to your room. This is between father and me." His tone was so serious that Alberta reluctantly complied. Marvin woke up at an unusual hour on his birthday. He was normally a late sleeper, but this day was special. It was his last day. When he looked in the mirror, he had trouble recognizing himself. Cocaine and depression had physically devastated him, but mentally he had never been this clear. When he went downstairs, he found his family waiting with birthday wishes. Alberta had prepared a cake, but Marvin wasn't interested in eating. "Thank you, Mama, but I'm not hungry," he said. This was unusual because Marvin always appreciated his mother's cooking. Marvin Sr. tried to say happy birthday, son, to his son, but Marvin gave a cold response. Thank you, Father. I hope this will be a day to remember. The double meaning of these words would only be understood hours later. Marvin was ready to make his final move. He went to his father's room and knocked on the door. Dad, can we talk? Marvin Sr. opened it and was alarmed by his son's facial expression. There was a crazy intensity in Marvin's eyes. Dad, tomorrow is my birthday, Marvin said. I'm turning 45, and I want to tell you something. I forgive you. This unexpected forgiveness confused Marvin Sr. What are you forgiving? Everything. The beatings, the yelling, never loving me. I forgive it all. Because tomorrow, everything will be different. This ominous prediction deeply worried his father. Marvin continued, but I want one last thing from you. Free me from this pain, from this suffering. Liberate me. The exact meaning of the words was unclear, but the tone was threatening. Marvin found his father and began the final conversation. But this time he used a different approach. Existential questions. Dad, have you ever wanted to die? He asked. Marvin Sr. was shocked. What kind of crazy questions are these? Marvin continued. I do. Every day I want to. But I can't do it. I'm too much of a coward. This confession was unexpected and caught Marvin Sr. off guard. But Marvin wasn't finished yet. You're my father. If I'm suffering, you should end it. These words hung in the air. Marvin Sr. couldn't understand exactly what his son meant, but he sensed something disturbing. Marvin, this is crazy talk. You need to see a doctor. But Marvin laughed. Doctor? Doctors can't help me. Only you can. And he left the room, leaving his father confused and worried. Marvin went up to his room and made his final preparation. He looked in the mirror and took a deep breath. He knew the next few hours would be crucial. He needed to get his father to exactly the right point. Too little, and the plan would fail. Too much and it might explode early. When he came out of his room, he was like a different man. There was a wild expression in his eyes, as if a switch had been flipped. Alberta noticed her son's sudden change and began to worry. Marvin, are you okay? She asked. Marvin smiled, but that smile wasn't warm at all. I'm perfect, Mama. Everything's about to be perfect. The meaning of these words would only be understood the next day. Marvin called the police again, this time more dramatically. My father is threatening to kill me. Please come immediately. This second call was more serious because there was a record of the prior incident. The police arrived and assessed the situation. Marvin appeared calm and rational, giving a detailed account. He's been aggressive all morning. I fear for my safety. Marvin Sr. tried to explain, but his agitated appearance made him seem less credible. The officers warned both men and suggested therapy. Marvin politely agreed, but Marvin Sr. was resistant. After the police left, Marvin gave his father a sinister smile. Now everyone knows you're dangerous. Perfect. At this moment, Marvin Sr. realized his son was deliberately manipulating him, but he couldn't understand the reason. Marvin, what are you trying to do? Just having fun, Dad. Isn't this exciting? Marvin's response was chilling. The truth is that Marvin Gaye committed suicide on April 1, 1984. Just not by his own hand, but by his father's. The plan was perfect, the execution flawless, and the consequences eternal. I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I made him do it. These words will forever haunt anyone who knows the real story. Marvin Gaye didn't just die that day. He orchestrated his death and in the process destroyed everyone he claimed to love. The most twisted April Fool's prank in history, except nobody was laughing. What happened at Gramercy Place on April 1, 1984, wasn't just a family dispute. It was carefully orchestrated psychological manipulation. Marvin Gaye, the Prince of Soul music, used his final 24 hours to turn his father into his own killer. He succeeded, but the cost was devastating. A father traumatized for life, a family destroyed, a legacy forever tainted. And perhaps most tragically, Marvin's pain didn't end with death, it was just transferred to the living. On his 45th birthday, instead of celebration, Marvin achieved the ultimate manipulation, transforming victim into perpetrator, love into destruction, family into tragedy. This story is a reminder that mental illness can have devastating consequences not just for the sufferer but for everyone around them. The contrast between Marvin's genius creativity and tragic end was a sobering example of how artistic brilliance and personal demons can coexist. Soul music lost one of its greatest voices that day, but the real tragedy was Marvin's deliberate choice. Instead of fighting to live, he chose to make someone else his destroyer. April Fool's Day, 1984. But this was no joke. This was calculated, premeditated emotional murder of a family, disguised as self-defense. Marvin Gaye's final performance and most devastating manipulation. Mental health experts later analyzed Marvin's behavior. Dr. Patricia Williams, a suicide specialist at UCLA, explained, "Vicarious suicide occurs when an individual lacks the courage for self-harm but manipulates others into causing their death. It's extremely rare but psychologically devastating for all involved." Marvin's case was a perfect example. His religious upbringing had taught him that suicide was a sin, but depression and addiction had made his life unbearable. The solution: to die by someone else's hand, without technically committing suicide. Marvin Gaye Sr. was convicted of manslaughter but received a suspended sentence because the court recognized the extenuating circumstances. Psychological evaluation revealed that he had been pushed to the breaking point by years of manipulation and provocation. Alberta Gaye never fully recovered. Realizing her son's deliberate manipulation devastated her. "He used his father as a weapon against himself," she would later say. The music world was shocked, but the truth slowly emerged. Marvin's final plan, turning his father into a living hell by making him a murderer, was perhaps the most twisted form of suicide in modern history. When the paramedics arrived, Marvin was still conscious but dying. His final words were devastatingly clear: "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I made him do it." This confession was heard by witnesses and later included in the police report. Marvin's plan was finally revealed: suicide by proxy. He had made his father his own executioner. The investigation revealed that Marvin had been planning this outcome for weeks. Friends testified that he had recently been talking about wanting to die but being too scared. The systematic provocation, police calls, physical confrontations, these were all calculated steps toward this tragic end. When Marvin Sr. returned with the gun, Marvin was strangely calm. He stood up and looked into his father's eyes. No fear, no pleading, just acceptance. "Do it," Marvin whispered. "This is what I wanted. End my pain." Marvin Sr. hesitated, the gun shaking in his hands. "Marvin, please." "Do it," Marvin screamed. "You've ruined my life. Now finish it." A single gunshot echoed through the house. Marvin collapsed instantly. Alberta was screaming in the background. Marvin Sr., shocked by what had happened, immediately called 911. "I shot my son. He attacked me. I had to defend myself." Marvin Sr. was deeply disturbed by his son's words and tried to leave the room, but Marvin blocked him. "We're not finished." He physically stopped his father. "Move, Marvin," Marvin Sr. commanded, but Marvin refused. Instead, his son pushed his father. "Make me move, old man." This physical aggression was too much. Marvin Sr. snapped. He pushed his son hard, and Marvin deliberately fell over dramatically. "You hit me," he screamed. "You're attacking me." Chaos ensued. Alberta came running downstairs from the noise. Marvin was lying on the floor and acting dramatically. "He's trying to kill me," he cried. Marvin Sr., overwhelmed by years of frustration and humiliation, completely lost control. He rushed to his room and grabbed the gun. Marvin began applying the final psychological pressure. When he was alone with his father in the living room, he launched his most devastating attack. "Dad, tell me the truth. Did you ever love me?" This question left Marvin Sr. in deep discomfort. "Of course I love you, son." But Marvin pressed. "Then why did you make my childhood hell? Why did you beat me constantly? Why did you make me feel worthless?" Each question was an emotional blow. Marvin Sr. tried to defend himself. "I was trying to make you strong." But Marvin laughed cruelly. "Strong? Look at me. I'm a drug addict. I'm bankrupt. I'm suicidal. Great job, father." Suicidal. Marvin Sr. was alarmed. "Marvin, what are you saying?" "I want to die, Dad. Every single day. But I'm too much of a coward to do it myself." This confession was devastating. "So maybe you should help me."